Hey guys, here's my Buffalo Rochester and Pittsburgh mallet. I've filmed this one several times before, but I now have another one here that I'm going to weather just like I've done mine. It was sent to me by Nick Vincent, and I have it here, and I'm going to bring it into the shot in just a second. He requested that I weather his model just like mine with some of the limestone runoff and rust highlights, and also that I offset the drivers. So as you can see, the drivers are not lined up. See how this is offset from this one? It's in a different position. And when Lionel shipped these mallets from the factory, the drivers were lined up, which is not very realistic because of wheel slip and stuff like that, you know, in the real world. So I'm going to bring his into the shot now. I have the sound turned off. Everything works just fine on it, but I figured I'd keep the sound off so I could talk. And here it comes. So as you can see, a before and after. And you can see I've already offset the drivers on it, and it's working smoothly. So I'm going to weather this engine, and then I will, so here's the before. And then this is what it will look like when I'm done weathering it. So what I'm going to do is weather it, and then we'll run it around as a double header, and I'll talk a little bit about the history of the Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh Railway. It'll be a good idea to do that now when I have two of these in. So cool. Cheers, guys. All right, so here's Nick's all finished up. And as you can see, it's got some really nice rust highlights and a limestone coating. There's the top of the cab, nicely weathered with the cab roof vents rusted, and the turret detail has some rust and even a little bit on the dynamo. And here's the tender. And then for comparison, here's mine. So I added a little bit more rust to mine. I liked how it looked on the roof like that, so I went ahead and did it to mine as well. And here they are together. All right, so let's get into the history a little bit. So as you can see, I have a book on the Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh Railway, and I'm just going to kind of flip through it a little bit. So the railroad started March 10th, 1887, and it was the combination of the Buffalo and Rochester Railroad and the Pittsburgh State Line Railroad. And you can see here, here's a basic track map. This railroad ran north to south, whereas most Class 1 railroads run east to west. This one had a more unusual route, and it made most of its revenue hauling coal from the Pittsburgh area, and it would travel north, and just past East Salamanca, the line would split, and a spur would go to Buffalo, and then another spur would go up here to Rochester, and past Rochester to the Genesee docks. So let's take a look at that. So here's a pretty good shot of one of the coal trestles at the Genesee docks, and the Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh coal trains would be shoved up onto the trestle. The coal would be dumped off, and then there was a gravity track here, which you could see running down here, where the coal cars would be pushed, and then they would roll back down into the classification yard. If you look at this page here, we have coal being unloaded onto a barge. And then if we flip a couple of pages just over to here, also another service provided at these docks was the ability to ferry freight cars and passenger cars across to Canada. So there's the Ontario, it's a ferry boat. And you can see here the freight cars sticking out of the back of the ferry. And I think that's really cool. One last picture. Here we have a passenger train at the coal dock, and then we have some coal cars up there being unloaded. So you can see all the railroad action that happened in this very small space. Really interesting railroad, and really interesting way to ship goods and services and transport people at the same time. So cool stuff. Now let's take a look at some of the motive power on this railroad. Of course, we have to start with a 2662 hauling coal. So this is one of their mallets, and it's in the mid-20s. Here's one of their passenger trains called the Pittsburgh Flyer. It's Very nice, old school style. I really love it. Here's a gas car nicknamed the Meteor. They also called it the Bug or the Hoodle Bug. So not Doodle Bug, it actually says Hoodle Bug. So that's really cool. Here's a 2882 in the shops being serviced. That is awesome. So here you go. Here's a picture of the 2662 and the 2882. Brand new, very clean, just out of the shop with white walls on the wheels. And the 2662s replaced a lot of the smaller steam engines on the railroad and hauling freight. And the 2882s replaced a lot of the smaller engines that were typically used in pusher service. So by getting these mallets, they were able to retire and also reassign a lot of their smaller locomotives. As their coal and freight traffic grew, the need for larger motive power also grew. So there's a nice close-up of the 2662. And then the 2882. So the Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburg was a very successful railroad right up until 1930 when the Baltimore and Ohio assumed control of the railroad. So the B&O wanted to get in on the revenue that this railroad was making by hauling coal, and so they basically bought their way into it and took over everything. And these mallets were then reassigned to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. They were renumbered, and so the same thing with the 2882s, which eventually became the B&O's EL series. And some of them were rebuilt into simple locomotives and lasted up until the mid to late 50s, I believe. So that's the, a little bit of history on the railroad. So now we're going to get into running these. So I'll run them as a double header, and then I'll put mine at the back of the train to do some pushing. So stick around. Thanks, guys.
This is the Yardmaster. You are cleared to depart on signal indication. Over. Roger that. Here we go. Out.
Okay, guys, so there you go. A little bit of history on the BR&P, and I thought it would be really fun to be able to do a double header and then do a pusher. So if you guys want to attempt to do a push-pull kind of situation like this with a steamer on the front and a steamer pushing, make sure you could individually control the steamer pushing. So I toggled over to engine 74, that's what my mallet is, and I had to speed it up and slow it down at certain points to keep it from pushing the center of the train off the track. So it takes a little bit of skill to do it. And I did have an accident, which is if you saw me reach my hand over the station to fix one of the cars, it's because the pusher was starting to push the center of the train off the track. So if you do it, just be careful with it, go slow. It is fun, and it is kind of like operating a real train. So cool stuff. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you next time, guys. All right, take care.